Hey! Hey. Welcome to Indicar. We did not see a Halloween movie, and this movie still scared the shit out of me at times. We saw Gone Girl. Okay, this is, same guy who did Fight Club? Is it the same writer or the same director?
Yes, it was the same director who did Fight Club. It starred Ben Affleck and Rosamund Pike, who most Americans don't actually know her.
Which is a shame, because I've seen her in some good stuff.
She's absolutely brilliant. I really hoped that this would be her breakout American role, and I think it was.
Okay, but, if you know anything about Fight Club, this movie doesn't have that same level of twist, because a lot of movie happens after the reveal. A lot of movie, actually.
Well, then there's a second reveal, but we're going to first talk about it without spoilers, then we're actually going to go talk about it with a couple spoilers for those of you who haven't seen it. I will say this, for those of you who haven't seen it but have read the book, you're in for no surprises. All the reviews I've read of people who have read the book say that the movie's basically identical.
That would explain the weird pacing, because the movie does this thing where it starts off really tense, then it kind of dips, then it gets really tense again, and then it just kind of like doesn't know where to go and stops.
Yeah, the book has a lot to do with that. Well, it's a wonderfully written script.
Oh, I forgot about this.
I think it's one of the better book-to-movie transitions. You can definitely tell something is off with the pacing.
Yeah.
And you can see the chapter.
It doesn't have a feel like a movie, but see it anyway. Like, okay, it's not a perfect movie, but oh my god, this is an amazing story, and it's amazingly well acted. Yeah,
the acting is Tyler Perry in one of his few straight roles and not purely comedic. He's brilliant.
Neil Patrick Harris in one of his many straight person roles.
A little creepy, but his acting was on point.
Definitely. Ben Affleck, we're in a little disagreement here. I thought it was fine. She wasn't so hot on it, but if you dislike Ben Affleck for being an asshole, this movie that's not gonna be your problem here. He doesn't Ben Affleck it up, as it were.
No, he plays it very constrained. I thought that he could have used a little more emotion during some of the scenes, but ultimately, the acting was great. I don't know who played his sister, Margot.
No, I really liked his sister.
Wow. I haven't seen her in anything else
she
that jumps
doesn't
out
ring
to
a
me
bell
and goes,
either.
hey, I've seen her.
I think I recognize the Hispanic police officer lady, though. She was familiar to me.
Yeah, she feels like she's been on TV
I'm sure that if I
bit.
look her up, I'll know her, but
again, really well acting. I thought the deputy was a little cheesy, but hey, when you have so many...
the deputy, I felt, was supposed to be. Yeah. Okay, so movie starts, guy goes to visit his sister at the bar they run together. He comes home, his house is a little messed up, and his wife is missing. He calls the cops, and it becomes this big, huge missing persons fiasco, partly because she is the inspiration for her mother's very lucrative Amazing Amy book series.
Scott Peterson mixed with just... If you turn on CNN, see someone accused of a crime, and media camped outside your house, this is that, only multiplied by 20.
It's, I was gonna make some comparisons to Fight Club, because what happens in Fight Club is that there's a masculine power fantasy beat-em-up club, and a lot of the fans of Fight Club latch on to that and really unironically enjoy that, which is the opposite point of the movie. And I was afraid a similar thing was going to happen here, but I think it's a little more obvious in this one that the whipping boy here is the media. And
I disagree.
That's not the only whipping boy, but no one's gonna misread that one.
I actually disagree. They had a chance to actually criticize the media for how they handle and how they sensationalize sex and murder cases, and they didn't go far. It was like they went just enough, and then they said, oh wait, we're actually criticizing ourselves, and pulled back. So I wish they had taken that extra step, and just did something more with the media.
I'll rebut that later in the, or I'll offer a different point later in the spoiler section, because at that point I would be in super spoilers.
I think we're past the point that we can talk about the film without spoilers.
Well, let's see, Well, let's go with right up until the first chapter split, which is obviously when that person's in their car, escaping, as it were.
Well, actually, I think the chapter split sooner. One interesting thing about the story is it's told in dueling narratives. Present,
Definitely.
flashback, and despite the whole film, you get that dueling narrative. So the question of who's telling the truth, who's lying, who's not telling the truth, who's embellishing
there's definitely, there's no perfect narrator here. It's very much, we are being told the story from this person's perspective as it is happening now. And that can, if you tend to go into movies and immediately, like I tend to do this a lot, I just go with the perspective of whoever we're following. I tend to miss things. That can throw you. Thankfully, I had been spoiled, so I knew where this was going. So I wasn't thrown.
Hadn't.
Yeah, you got that's it. Well, we have a spoiler corner for a reason. So big spoiler tag here. Recommendation: this is not a date movie.
Oh no.
This is not a feel-good movie. This is a tour de force, gut-punching movie.
3-hour movie.
Yeah, God, it didn't feel like 3 hours at all, but it
did
came
to
out
me
to
a little
almost
bit
that.
after the halfway point. It does get a little laggy then, but stick with it. I think it's a good film. Just, yeah, this is not a date film.
This is you're going in expecting to be challenged movie.
Oh, and it's rated R for a reason. Seriously, parents. It's
Yes.
rated R for a reason. There's only the one
Boobies.
topless. There was only the one topless and the one shower scene, but
Which was, how did they manage to not show her nipples in that scene? I don't know.
shadow and a lot of things.
Maybe CGI'd.
Yeah, I think it was CGI too, but there's a
Just
lot of
based
cursing.
on the angle.
If you're big on, if you can maybe ignore some topless, but you don't like cursing, this isn't the film for you. Lots of cursing.
But, okay, so, spoilers, you've been warned. Okay, so, Amy spent about 2 years arranging a narrative of her husband killing her so she could escape their marriage.
I think it was only about a year because
Well, it was
she
a
saw
long
the girl,
time.
She saw the girlfriend and then started faking
Oh, yeah.
the diaries
Yeah,
because she wrote a ton of those diary entries at the same. Oh, ooh.
That's Yaya.
I'll call her back.
Okay.
Sorry about that. This is what
Yeah.
happens when you have your phone out to read the trailers we saw before the film.
Yaya's important, though.
But anyway, she writes all these entries, and she's smart enough to use extra pens. So hint, if you're faking a document, use more than one pen.
Yeah, so no one notices the similar ink thing. The level of detail and commitment was mind-boggling.
Amazing.
It was like, okay, there were some holes in the narrative, like, okay, she doesn't completely burn the diary, and the cop notices that. It's like, why wouldn't you finish burning the diary if you were trying to remove this evidence? Like, this felt a little too set up.
But not to the point where the cop could do anything about it.
No, and the only reason he goes so long without getting arrested is because there's no body, and it's very hard to make a murder case stick when there's no body.
Unlike Law and Order, this one actually did take some real police procedure and some, I don't know, no, you can't just run out and arrest the first criminal.
That you think did it.
Yeah, and I love Law and Order, but...
And the cops don't, well, okay, some of the cops come off as dumb, but the point is made that the cops who know what they're doing are being pulled along by this person with way too much commitment to this narrative. It's absolutely insane. So, he does, what was his name? Adam?
Ben Affleck?
Let's go with Ben. Okay, so Ben finally catches on because she bought a whole bunch of stuff and credit cards in his name, and he apparently signed over for better life insurance with her and all sorts of stuff that he realizes is making him look very bad. And, and she hid all the stuff she bought with credit cards in his sister's woodshed. Twin sister's woodshed. Oh god, the twin sister just... Oh, and he was having an affair with a student of his. That wasn't good. But ultimately narratively pointless. Like, it was just another cog in the machine.
Scott Peterson had an affair with a woman, And I think that this was heavily based off of Scott Peterson. Murdered his wife about, I want to say 10 years ago, but I know it was more recent than that, but it wasn't super
I
recent.
absolutely do not keep up with this kind of thing.
And it was all over the news. You couldn't turn on CNN without having to see that. The trial was publicized. I think a lot of the influence came from that. Again, The Mistress.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I think The Mistress was added. Plus, you know, I'm pretty sure Rosamund Pike wouldn't let them show her bare breasts.
God, she let them show her in really effective lingerie.
Yeah.
Good. Oh, okay, so there was, we'll get to that. I don't want to jump ahead to that. So, as the narrative is falling into place around poor Ben of him having killed his pregnant, loving, but terrified of him wife who went to buy a gun.
Blonde All-American.
It's Tyler Perry makes the point, she didn't just write a good narrative, she wrote the perfect murder narrative. Eventually we catch up with her about an hour into the movie.
Yeah, it's a really quick reveal when you compare the next hour and a half later, or it feels like a long time after that reveal.
But we catch up with her, she's fleeing, she's got a calendar with little post-it notes about when she's supposed to, like, leave a tip on a phone line about the stuff in the woodshed and all this crazy stuff. She hits herself in the face with a hammer so she looks like an abused spouse. She puts on a New Orleans accent, flees south, has a big fanny pack full of money, and stops at like a wayside
Eats a lot of candy to gain weight.
Yeah, eats a lot of candy. She really, again, we cannot stress enough. We're talking like monk, obsessive compulsive levels of dedication to this nonsense. I actually am gonna go spoiler free on what happens with her at this halfway house that she stops at, but basically her plans don't go perfect. Wrench gets thrown into her plans, and she gets picked up by Neil Patrick Harris, because she's broke now, who was her first boyfriend and was obsessed with her. At about the same time, we get to meet one of her other old flames, who she accused of rape, with the same holes, like, she tied things around her wrist, had rough sex with him the night before, made it look a lot like a rape case, and who's not going to believe her? Guys do lose out on that one. Not trying to defend rapists, because unfortunately guys are predominantly the rapists, but it's hard for a guy to claim that he isn't when it's their word versus his word. It's
somewhat incredibly convincing. It's very easy for a guy to get away with it if a woman has a history, but a woman like her, blonde, all-American, wealthy,
who's gonna believe him?
And
she does that whole thing where she goes to obscene lengths to make it look real. Like, she doesn't just up and accuse him of rape. She plans that. So we meet up with that guy, and so she hangs with Neil Patrick Harris, and Neil Patrick Harris plays this really, really effectively creepy, spurned ex kind of thing. Like, he's really rich, and she's really uncomfortable around him.
Well, she's acting that, but she knows she's stuck in between a rock and a hard place, and I guess his really, really cool beach house is a better prison than the one she had with her husband.
But she eventually decides that that's not going to work, so she pulls a similar trick to the guy she pretended to rape her, except in this version, she slices Neil Patrick Harris's throat open while they're having sex, and then pretends to have escaped from kidnapping and returned her husband.
And they don't wash the blood off of her until the media vultures can see her covered in blood.
Yeah. And, although I did feel bad for laughing at the scene with her and Neil Patrick Harris having sex before she kills him. I was laughing because I'm thinking to myself, damn it, Neil Patrick Harris, why are you the gay man getting all this action in all your stuff? Like, he plays the womanizer on How I Met Your Mother. Like, he's a gay man who plays that role.
I thought it was funny because of just how awkward he was during that entire scene. it's a character that's never probably has only been in love once. He's finally with the woman of his dreams. She's being super aggressive, and he's like, I love you, but I don't know how to handle this. And
seeing Neil Patrick Harris try and have rough sex with a woman was not a thing I needed to see, but it was kind of funny.
They made it in a way that you could laugh at that scene if you wanted to.
But you could also find it terrifying because, oh my god, what's her name?
Rosamund Pike.
Rosamund Pike. Oh my lord. After she slits his throat, she tries to slip back into the devoted wife role with Ben, and she throws out some creepy ass smiles. It's like, hi husband, and I'm just cringing in my seat. Oh my lord.
She really is an amazing actress.
I love her in The World's End. I loved her in that. I've seen her in a couple other things. But, God, yeah, this is the best thing I've seen her in. She nails this. And, more so than the media being raked over the coals, because regardless of how pointed, because it's kind of a low blow. They do not aim at CNN or the New York Times or, MSNBC. They don't aim at those. They aim at the low-hanging fruit of HNN and, the talk show circuit. They aim at the low-hanging fruit.
The talk show circuit, the woman on NBC who interviewed the husband, I think his name was Nick, the character.
Maybe.
But Ben Affleck, because
we can't remember.
Yeah, but he was a great character. He was a great actor, so don't get me wrong when I say we can't remember his character name as him being unforgettable. You constantly saw him and thought Ben Affleck in your head.
Yeah. I mean, Rosamund Pike, first of all, is not as heavily and ingrained into the cultural conscious name. And second of all, her name gets used a lot.
Amy is everywhere in the film, so you can't forget
her parents are
hers.
A piece of work.
Yeah, but no, that talk show host was actually glorified as being like the mediator, whereas the CNN-esque network is the one that gets a little vilified.
But the media getting raked over the coals is a constant theme, but again, they're aiming for low-hanging fruit. What they're really shooting at is suburban conformity, it really looked like.
Not suburban. I think it was more class conformity, because remember what she said about how she drank the cheap beer, she watched reality television, and then when she's with Neil Patrick Harris, she pours him coffee.
Talks about how he likes 18th century music and 19th century painters.
He colors her hair properly he gives her the hair color.
She's essentially a psychopath who can adjust herself to whatever the guy she chameleons into whatever role is important. And the ending is unsatisfying because Ben is stuck with the choice of ditching her because he knows she's a psycho who killed Neil Patrick Harris, and getting, vilified by the media all over again. And that was fun the first time, wasn't it?
I think it's also for the child and the fact that he wouldn't have an escape. He's now stuck imprisoned with her just like she's stuck imprisoned with him.
Yeah.
So I think it was a perfect ending. It's not a fairy tale, hey, everyone gets their happily ever after.
No, I agree. What I was really hoping for was just... Basically, I was hoping that in that scenario, I would just say, fuck it, I'm out. No, I'm not going to live married to a woman I know murdered a guy and tried to have me murdered. I'm ditching this. I will find something to do with myself. But he doesn't do that, and it does seem... The child thing makes sense. Like, him sticking around for the child, because he is a Missouri guy. Like, okay, they met in New York, they were trying the cosmopolitan thing, but you get the sense that Ben is playing a very traditional values guy.
He is playing a very traditional values guy.
With all the hypocrisy that comes with that, he was totally fine with ditching his wife and hooking up with a younger girl prior to the, murder and the kid, but that's still... It seems like he would stick around for the kid.
Right, well, I think it's also to help protect that child from its mother.
Yeah. I feel bad for his sister because she knows as well. She's also very much aware of how screwed up his wife is. God, this movie's a kick. It's a kick. And there's that trough after we meet up with Amy on the road again. Then it picks up when her plans start to not go right, because you're like, now where's this going to go? Because prior to that, everything was falling into place, and once you realized that it was all set up, you're kind of like, well, it going exactly how she wants isn't satisfying, but then it starts to screw up, and you're like, how's she going to solve this? You get invested in again, and then at the end, there's the very real tension of him living with a woman he knows is capable of murder, for really bad reasons.
I thought that part was so boring because you know at that point that there's nothing either one of them are going to do.
I liked the moment where not just the moment where, like, the first night he locks the door and spends the whole night up watching the door because his wife's in the house now. No, I like the bit, like, weeks later, he leaves his room wearing socks to be as quiet as possible. He is on a knife's edge around her.
And then she tucks him in like a mommy saying, I
Yeah.
love you and I want us to be happy. I think deep down the reason why she couldn't stay with Neil Patrick Harris is another one, I can't remember the character's name because the actor was really good.
And to be fair, he also didn't get his name said a lot.
I think it was said 3 times,
Maybe
4.
Yeah.
But I think she kind of liked who she was with Ben Affleck's character a little, which is why she couldn't stay with him.
There's a potential misogynistic reading of this movie, but I would argue against such a thing because it's not women, it's Amy.
But there's no real feminist reading of this film.
No.
Everything has a feminist, a misogynist. Everything has a reading, but I don't think that there's a dialogue meant to be read as a feminist read.
No, this one it's not trying to make a statement on men are assholes or women are assholes. This is clearly a story of an insane person and the guy trying to survive around her. And using those two, it does make some comments on the things people do for marriage and how nuts some of that might be. But it's not trying to make a broad statement about people.
No. If anything, the discourse was the media discourse, and I personally think they could have gone further, but...
Yeah, the media discourse was heavy-handed, probably intentionally.
But I thought it just stopped. It didn't go that extra mile and say, this is a bad thing. It just showed us that this is something that exists.
But the big message, really, I would say, is about the insanity of the marriage life, I guess.
That some people have adopted. Life. I think it's also mob mentality and don't judge something.
Oh, yeah, definitely mob mentality. There were some moments... Like... There were way more reporting cars than should have existed in that town. Like, there were about 20 separate network vans outside their house. And that's just too many. Like, that number would not exist. It would be 10 at the most.
Yeah, but then you have the people in lawn chairs sitting at the house across the street watching the show.
Yeah, but that would happen.
Yeah, it's just mob mentality, media, they go into hypocrisy of marriage, hypocrisy of...
There's a very real sense that Amy's parents are probably the ones who screwed her up, because there's a bit early on where Amy says that the Amy of the books... she took up cello as a kid and dropped it after like a year. Amy went on to be a protege in the books.
Amazing Amy.
Amazing Amy. And then Amy says she never got a dog, but Amazing Amy got a dog.
And we can prove that that is, if not a reliable narration, at least a factual one, because Ben Affleck
backs it up. Yeah.
Backs it up. So we can at least assume
and
that
I wouldn't
most
put it,
of that
and I
story
wouldn't put it
happened.
past her parents having, spent some time with them in the film. They were very clearly far more interested in their benefit than Amy's benefit.
what they did hint on just briefly, remember the woman that got her photo taken with him?
Yeah.
Groupies obsessed with this kind of reporting, wanting their 10 minutes of fame, wanting to be seen with him.
Hanger-oners.
But they only had the one woman, and she had one photo, and then it was largely forgotten.
It again felt much like taking shots at the low-hanging fruit of media. There was a lot of that, and it's not undeserved or anything, but I guess that could be the sort of Fight Club thing where it's like, it's so obvious that it's meant to kind of mislead you from what the film's actually trying to say. Like, Fight Club is so in your face about the destruction of masculinity and blah, 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 that a lot of people miss a lot of the subtext, because the text is just so heavy. And I think this one does a better job of balancing, though.
Yeah, it's a very balanced film. The dual narrative is very interesting. I can't think of many films that has a dual narrative
with two unreliable
the
narrators.
Entire film up until the end.
Two unreliable narrators.
Well, they're reliable after the big reveal when it dual.
Yeah, the whole opening segment, we're going through like the highlights of Amy's fake diary before we know it's fake. So, had I not gone in knowing that she was arranging the whole thing, I might have gotten sucked into that narrative she herself was presenting. Okay, God, we could write papers on this thing.
Yeah, it was really good.
Are you going to use this for any papers, or?
Probably not,
No.
but I thought it was interesting.
Someone I know on the internet's doing a thing about, the evolution of sci-fi using, like, Blade Runner up until Star Trek.
Good.
Yeah.
Are we doing commercials now?